to get a seat. If you do not have a cold drink, please make sure you get one. Today's the day to hydrate as well as remember. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I know lots of you traveled a long distance to be here for this celebration of Bob Kopp's life. I want to acknowledge his immediate family sitting right here, his wonderful wife Sally, children, Ben and Emily, their spouses Laura and Kyle, Madeline and Arlo, who are having a lovely time playing with the other children, but they were the light of Bob's life, and I just wanted them to know that I'm sending them a big psychic hug right now. So my name is Joanne Connolly. I'm actually not related to the family, but I moved in right over here. My first sight was Sally and Emily in a pink snowsuit in a big snow pile right out front, and once I moved in, we became lifelong friends, and I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world to have these people as neighbors. There seemed to be a steady stream of our children between houses, and in between it all, always Bob was there. He was ready to lend a hand, have a conversation, share a laugh with us. My then 4-year-old son, Connor, initially had this irrational fear of him. In fact, whenever he saw Bob, he would run the other way or hide. We have no idea what that was about, but Bob, with his persistence and patience, he won him over in good time. On the other hand, my daughter would not leave Bob alone. From the minute she could walk, she would watch outside, and when he was out there, she'd say, "Bob's out," and I couldn't grab her. She would run out the door, and then she would just tag along with him around while he did his gardening. And he was patient and loving and kind, never irritable, taught her all his gardening tips. Her most favorite being how to kill slugs with beer, which she knows to this day. So that's how I'll always remember Bob. Welcoming, patient, kind, always willing to share a story, have a conversation. He always had time for us. His love of life and his deep immersion in it was infectious. He'll be missed always. Today's a day for all of us to celebrate this wonderful man and share our own unique memories and stories of him. I want you guys to all feel free to share personal memories with the family here. They really will love hearing all of that. Take some time to check out the pictures of Bob in the house as well as the slideshow, which I have not watched yet because I wouldn't be able to stand up here and do that if I did. And please leave a memory in the blue memory book that I believe is right behind me. Okay, so before you leave, please write in that book for everybody. We're going to start today by hearing from some who are closest to Bob, and then we'll open the mic to welcome anyone else who would like to make any comments and be able to share anything. Due to the heat, I want us to try to limit our sharing to just a few minutes, just because by the time we get done, we're all going to be melted. Refresh with a cold drink, as I said frequently. By the time you're feeling thirsty, you're already dehydrated. We do have several nurses here, but we want to avoid any unfortunate incidents. There'll be a German buffet from one of Bob's favorite restaurants, Carl's Sausage Kitchen, at about 5 o'clock. We're going to have some time to set that up, but we may interrupt the program briefly if the food comes to get people started on that. With that, I'd like to start by bringing Sally Kleiss, Bob's wife, up to the front.
Bob's smiling, no doubt, at each and every one of you because you meant the world to him. And it seems so right to only have people here that he was close to, and I feel like we've achieved that. He loved every one of you, lived through every one of you, shared stories after stories about all his nieces and nephews and what they were doing and where they were living. You'd be quite surprised at the amount of knowledge he had about each one of you. I want to say that how happy I am that we have people, family members, friends, came from Colorado, Florida, Georgia, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and even across the pond from London, Crosby. It's important to the kids and I, as Joanne said, that because of the heat, we stay hydrated. So please, if you need to get up and get cold water, please do so. Most of you know Bob passed away on our 39th wedding anniversary, June 21st, the summer solstice. I find special meaning in that. We were married in 1980 when the sun reached its highest position in the sky and on the day with the longest period of daylight. Bob loved the summertime and being outdoors, one with nature. In fact, it was his idea for our honeymoon that we travel cross-country in his classic 65 black Mercedes for 3 weeks of camping adventures in and around the national parks from Arizona through Colorado, the Dakotas, Utah, Wyoming, and up to Montana. Interestingly enough, we traveled out west during an oppressive heat wave similar to the weather we're having today. Picture this: no air conditioning, no seat belts, and numerous breakdowns along the way. Yes, that's right, no air conditioning. Bob had already taken a solo cross-country trip in his Volkswagen van and had told me of his discoveries as a free-spirited young adult in the late 60s and early 70s. Yes, he was a hippie of the coolest order, and I found that very attractive at the time. In 1976, we met. I was charmed by his warm smile. I also loved his long, wild, curly hair, low-slung bell-bottom blue jeans, and New York accent. And I understand, Richard, you once tried to talk him into cutting that hair, so I'm glad you didn't achieve that. At the time, he was very interested in politics, human rights, history, exploring the country, and, of course, his very large and eclectic album collection. Hopefully, his music taste will be reflected in today's playlist. I thought of Bob as this fun-loving guy, confident in who he was at the time. He was engaged in the world, and he was engaging with people from all walks of life. As one of his best high school friends stated, Bob didn't have a phony bone in his body. I agree. He was authentic. He didn't mind telling anybody what was on his mind, as most of you all know. Whether you agreed or didn't agree, he shared his advice very freely. I agree he was authentic and comfortable speaking his mind during spirited conversations. He was at the time well-read and remained so right up to this past year. Bob enthusiastically exposed me to new experiences, such as driving to New York to meet his parents for the first time. It was late in the evening, and he insisted he wanted me to see Times Square. And I just sat gaping while I looked out the windows. Mia's here. I had never been to New York City, and over that same weekend, Bob introduced me to Little Italy, Chinatown, the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, and Central Park. For those of you who have been on the receiving end of one of Bob's guided tours, and many of you have been, you know Bob loved to share his historical knowledge and tidbits about a variety of known and little-known tourist destinations. His mother Hetty came with us on this adventure in the Big Apple, and I always wondered if she had a premonition that we would one day end up marrying. It became obvious after that trip to New York that Bob came from a background steeped in very strong family ties and friendships. Bob loved his parents and treasured his German heritage, as both his parents were immigrants from Germany. Something you might not know about Bob is the love of the show Leave It to Beaver, which he watched pretty much every single day this past year. My guess is he held this idealized view of his own family: his dad Erwin, his mother Hetty, his older brother Richard, and his younger brother Paul. And I say that with love because I truly think that was his memory. He grew up on Long Island in Albertson, New York, where he and his brothers pursued neighborhood adventures with the Redmond family and the Rogers family, among many others. Recently, after Bob finished watching an episode of Leave It to Beaver, Bob stated, "Well, Sally, all was right with the world. I can move on with my day now." The simple pleasures. Bob and I met as student interns from Northeastern University and Ohio State University, respectively, while we worked at Hogan Regional Center in Danvers. We both worked with residents with severe special needs, he with adolescents and me with younger children. He loved and nurtured those kids, and it was apparent to me that someday he would be a great nurturer of his own children. During his years working in special education, Bob was firm, respectful, good-natured, and had great empathy for his students. Bob and I were married 4 years when we had our first child, Ben. And 6 years later, Emily joined our family from Seoul, South Korea. We knew without hesitation that we wanted children, and we valued family above all else. Bob believed in practical parenting. If he was gardening or building a fence, Ben would be at his side assisting him from the age of 2 on, and that is no exaggeration. Even to the point where Bob would put a beer down on a bench. When Bob turned around, Ben picked up the beer and when Ben was 5 or 6, he would stand on the bow of the boat where Bob would instruct him to pull the heavy anchor in while we were on the ocean. I would watch it in horror. When Emily was 3, she would crawl into the car with Bob where I changed the oil. She also helped him watch the car from an early age. Both kids assisted Bob in the kitchen as he cooked his authentic German food, including Sauerbraten, Rouladen, Spätzle, and Moldasche, a German dumpling. It was so important to Bob that he installed the same self-reliance in Ben and Emily that he learned growing up with Erwin and Hetty. Bob and I both thoroughly enjoyed watching our kids play sports, play musical instruments, make lasting friendships, succeed in school, and become the hardworking and loving people they are today. We considered ourselves so lucky that Bob lived to see both of our kids graduate high school, go to college, get their first job, and learn to be self-supporting. How happy Bob was that he was able to meet and grow to love both Laura and Kyle, and know that his children had chosen such wonderful partners and were competent to begin their own families. I trust they understand, as many of you do, that all marriages have their challenges, and my 39 years with Bob was no exception. For me, this quote by Darlene Schacht sums it up best. A successful marriage isn't the union of two perfect people, it's that of two imperfect people who have learned the value of forgiveness and grace. I would say there was a lot of forgiveness needed in our relationship and a lot of grace needed in our relationship. We lasted 39 years. The final gift that Bob and I shared together was spending his last 19 months getting to know our precious grandchildren, Madeline and Arlo. They, without a doubt, enriched and extended Bob's life this past year. The babies, along with Ben and Laura and Emily and Kyle, brought us immeasurable happiness in ways they will never know. On numerous occasions, Bob stated to me how proud he was of both our kids for the lives they were leading and the people they had become. I'm extremely grateful to Ben and Laura, to Emily and Kyle, for the support and assistance they provided to both Bob and I throughout this difficult year. On a final note, Ben and Emily, you are your dad's legacy.
Yes, I'm her twin sister. First of all, I share Sally's joy in seeing so many family and friends here today to honor Bob's 68 years on this earth. As many of you know, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Sally and Bob over the past year. In fact, we spent more time together in the past 12 months than we have in decades. And for this, I feel quite blessed. The dogs. They want me to slow down. In some ways, it was as if I was a co-traveler in this intimate journey of theirs. As you know, there were a number of unexpected detours on this journey, but there were many grace-filled moments as well. Over the past few weeks, I've had time to reflect on this experience, and in doing so, came across a poignant quote by George Eliot. It seems very relevant for the closing chapter of Sally and Bob's story. What greater thing is there for two human souls than to feel they are joined for life, to strengthen each other in all labor, to rest on each other in all sorrow, to minister to each other in all pain, and to be one with each other in silent, unspeakable memories of the last parting. Once again, I thank you all for coming here today to celebrate Bob's memorable 68 trips around the sun. And now Ben will share, followed by Emily.
So a lot of you guys know him well. You all have your own individual memories. I'm pretty private, so I'm going to keep mine to myself. But I do have a poem that a good friend of mine sent me. And anyone that knows me knows this is very out of character. It is called Follow a Famous Father by Edgar Guest, who was an American poet in the early 20th century, I believe. And it goes like this. I follow a famous father. His honor is mine to wear. He gave me a name that was free from shame, a name he was proud to bear. He lived in the morning sunlight and marched in the ranks of right. He was always true to the best he knew, and the shield that he wore was bright. I follow a famous father, and never a day goes by, but I feel that he looks down to me to carry his standard high. He stood to the sternest trials, as only a brave man can. Though the way be long, I must never wrong the name of so good a man. I follow a famous father, not known to the printed page, nor written down in the world's renown as a prince of his little age, but never a stain attached to him, and never he stooped to shame. He was bold and brave, and to me he gave the pride of an honest name. I follow a famous father, and him I must keep in mind. Though his form is gone, I must carry on the name that he left behind. It was mine on the day he gave it. It shone as a monarch's crown, and as fair to see as it came to me, it must be when I pass it down.
Definitely gonna need you guys to bear with me a little.
We've got you. Don't worry about it.
Thank you. So before I start, I just wanted to call out something my Uncle Paul had said. He was with my dad up until the very end, and he had said to me a memory, and he called it $1 million day. And it just struck me that I'm really hoping today, besides $1 million degree day, it can be $1 million day. So I really appreciate you guys being here. All right. Okay. My dad gets more tears than you, Kyle. I'm sorry. Did not cry as much as our wedding. Okay. All right. I was once told that loss is a tunnel and not a cave. It can be very easy, though, to stop halfway through that tunnel in order to treat it like your cave. You want to shrink. You want to hide and avoid everything and everyone. I'm sorry. There's absolutely nothing that can curb that feeling in the beginning. You feel like you want nothing and that no one can give it to you. But as you start to come out of that, you realize you weren't alone at all, ever. Through every step through this tunnel, a new memory is revealed, a new conversation that brings up memories about who you're missing. And then you start to see that all these hands extending themselves really are just full of love and support. And bit by bit, you start to get yourself out of that tunnel. And everyone knows how much my dad appreciated a good story, and that a lot of his favorite places to be were just with people. People were his favorite places. He liked to know things, and that's why he had such a great depth of academic knowledge and really tried to carry himself forward. But more than collecting things and knowing things, he wanted to know people. So because of that, I have gotten to meet his friend group a little bit, and it's, honest to God, the most caring and supportive group I've met in a while. So because of that, and as my mom touched on, he also made sure that as a family, we were very rooted in these values, and that first and foremost, Kyle and I and Ben and Laura carried forth his strong sense of love and strength, and that when we got to that own point in our lives, we would make sure that's what we consider to be the most important. They say that one day your parents will pick you up and put you down for the last time. Well, that's just not simply true with my dad. Sure, the piggyback rides had to stop, and climbing up on his shoulders wasn't really a good idea anymore, but whenever I needed a second opinion, he was the first call I made. And he always answered. It didn't matter if it was about life, my car, if what I had was really poison ivy. But not only did he take that call without hesitation, he wouldn't rest until I either had my answer or a solution in place. And that just says a lot about who he was. He always extended himself, even when he himself was not feeling that well. And sure, he had his particulars. I'm sure everyone has just as many stories about my dad as they do good ones. And as my parents were saying, that's the mark of a good person, because we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for someone that we can grow with and that'll teach us things. And I think my dad definitely taught all of us here something very important. But every life lesson, and my mom was speaking to this very well, and I was thinking about all the memories. It wasn't just instruction, it was demonstration. Whether it was helping me change a tire for the first time, because heaven forbid any daughter of his didn't know how to change her tire, or whether it was how to check my oil or even change it, although I will never ever change my own oil. But the first time that I really have a clear memory of my dad is in the kitchen, and that's probably where he was very comfortable. And the first time we were making maltashen together, I remember how very carefully he explained it to me, even though I was probably 4 or 5, not really equipped to handle the knives that he gave me. But I remember him saying to me very, very carefully that when you fold the pastas over and you roll out the dough, you need to do it just thin enough so that when you look at the dumpling, you can just see the green of the spinach showing through. And it was always a long process, and it was always a little bit frustrating, but he never showed that, and he never felt that. And even though I was very young, it occurred to me at that time that's love. That is what love is. It's never being frustrated. It's taking the time to see the process through and making sure that the result you get out of it has just as much love as you put into it. So I may have gotten off of his shoulders and I may not hear his voice in the same way anymore, but thanks to the deep-rooted, ever-growing, and unwavering love as a father, I'm still sitting high above the negativity and the smog that sometimes this world tries to bring you down into. And although it is now a little quieter, I can always feel him guiding me and telling me to choose happiness, to choose light, and to make sure every single thing I do in my life is led by the same love he put into all things great and small. So thank you again, guys, for being here.
Laura, are you ready? This is Laura Kopp, Ben's wife.
Hello, everyone. My name's Laura, Ben's wife, and I wanted to share just briefly some of the stories that I remember about Bob. My fondest memories with Bob often took place around the dining room table. As many of you know, he loved to cook, and he loved to share memories, great and small, with those around him. I love to cook as well, and so this became a shared interest of ours, something that we would talk about. I would often ask for his advice, which he was very willing to give. And as I've spent, years luckily getting to know Bob and being in the kitchen and the dining room with Bob, so sweet. There are 3 kind of traits that rise to the top for me. First, he was extremely detail-oriented and slightly persnickety. And I do reflect on the time where I had dropped off some soup for him, Ben and I had made to enjoy, and after calling us profusely to thank us, he also asked exactly how many pearl onions we had used in the stock, because Fanny Farmer says that 12 is the optimal number. Also, he was very patient, and one of my fondest memories, being up in Vermont with him, he agreed to make rouladen for the whole group of us, friends and family up there with me. And if I know many of the Kopps and my family know what rouladen is, it's an intricate process of rolling out beef and salting and peppering it, and wrapping it around a pickle. It's delicious, but it's very labor-intensive. Not once did he complain. We probably made 100 rouladen, or felt like that for sure. And that's one of my most cherished memories of Bob. Lastly, he was extremely generous. That same night, after we had finished making all this rouladen, I noticed a dog come up and eat a couple of them, and Bob turned a blind eye to it, like a lesser man would have bopped him on the nose. But that was just really true to his character. And so while I think about, of course, passing along the recipes to our children of rouladen and maltashen and all of the German specialties through Bob's honor, I also think about those characteristics that he had, and coaching them to be like Bob. So that's, of course, sweating the details. Also, being patient, especially for those that we love and the pursuits that we love. And then, of course, being generous of spirit. And I think if they hold those things dear, they'll carry his honor and memory well.
Kyle Shirtliff, Emily's husband.
I'm just going to be very brief, guys. I just kind of figured I wanted to sit here and listen to everyone and kind of just think of what memories came to mind for me. And as I've been sitting here, I've been thinking about some of the first few times I've met Bob. And he just was very sweet, very honest, opinionated, but politely can do so, I guess. And when I first met him and I saw the love he has for Sally and for the rest of his family, and realizing that this is something that probably Emily would expect from me, I felt really comfortable and happy to know that I could be able to do that. And the memory that really keeps coming into my head as I've been sitting here is when I first decided to marry Emily. I was at work. It was a field trip to the Museum of Science that day, so it was a very hectic day, and I said to myself, I got this ring, I need to give it to her, but I gotta ask Bob and Sally first. So without saying anything to anyone, I was saying to myself, should I call? Should I text them? Say, well, I'm coming? I said, you know what, you just show up, you just do it. So I pulled up here wearing my clothes from work, and Sally saw me through the window thinking that I was just some salesman coming up trying to sell her something. But when I came in, and I think she knew kind of what was up, and Bob was sitting at the computer, and when I finally asked them just to see how happy they were and to know that they were going to let me be part of their family, it's just as good of a memory as I have as when I asked Emily for the same reason. So I just wanted to say I'm honored to be able to be a part of your family, and he was a great man.
Next we'll hear from Richard Kopp, who's Bob's brother.
Well, thank you all for coming to the celebration of Robert's life. Obviously, I grew up with him, and that's mainly where my memories are. They're kind of foggy. I just want to share a couple of things with you. When we were growing up, our family was very kind of conservative and straight-laced, and we always tried to do what our parents expected of us. We always kind of followed the rules. I was surprised and concerned when Robert decided to put his college education aside to get an old VW bus to travel around the country. I excuse him for his hair. But I don't remember telling him to cut it.
He told me that.
He told you that. So traveling around the country to become a hippie. At that time I was going to college in California and had witnessed the hippie lifestyle. I was not a fan. Apparently Robert needed to find a direction in life. Luckily he found it quickly and managed to stay out of trouble. I think it helped that his bus was not up to traveling too far. Sally might know more about that than I do. The other thing, Robert always sent me a birthday card. They were humorous and appropriate. Sometimes it was the only one I received. I will miss him.
Arthur Lawler, very good friend of Bob's. And Remy Lawler, his daughter.
Thank you for coming, and we're celebrating Bob. I can't believe he's gone. But that is life. I had a lot of respect for Bob. He was my best friend. I met him in the early 70s when we worked at Hogan Regional Center. We used to go to ball games together, sometimes concerts. We lived together a couple different times, once in Beverly Farms for a few months. And we were asked to leave because we had too many illegal smiles. That's from John Prine. Then we lived together in Essex for a year between 1977 and 78. I met Sally at that time. I think I remember Sally and her sister when they visited us in Beverly Farms. Different, but Bob and I shared a love of music, sports, women, and Southern
Oh, God.
Sorry. We also worked in the field of human services where we tried to improve the lives of people we service, the disabled, the youth that were in trouble. And we liked doing that. He met a woman he wanted to share his life with in 1976, and they married in 1977. We loved sports together. We shared a half-season ticket to the Celtics with another friend, Jim, for several years and witnessed 3 championships in 81, 83, and 86. And we really loved going. Sometimes we started off in the evening going to a bar called Sullivan's Tap, which
Still there.
which is still there, but where you could buy $2 drafts. And we started off and we added that our love of Southern Comfort. Okay. My biggest memory is when we went to when we vacationed in Vermont for at least 20 years. We shared a house in Lake Champlain with Bob's family and Deb Breen, and we had many great moments of boating, swimming, kayaking, and just going around. Sometimes Bob and I would disappear for a few hours. You know,
We had no idea where they were.
yeah. And it was usually one time we went up to we went to Montreal a few times. That's right, Remy. To see the. Okay. Yes, yes. We took a trip to Craftsbury, Vermont, with the hope of meeting Bill Lee, who we both admired. He was called the Spaceman. He was pitched for the Red Sox, and he was very outspoken. He called Don Zimmer, the manager, a gerbil, in a friendly way. But anyway, went up there. He was supposed to do a book signing, but his mother, Bill's mother, had died a few days before, and he was in California. That memory of Vermont is probably one of the things that I remember most. I remember his cooking. I always did the dishes. I can't cook, I can't cook. Memories live forever. And my daughter Remy would like to share memories of Captain Bob, as it was called, with you.
Hi. So I just want to share a couple memories. Bob was a very special person to me. Grew up going to Vermont every summer with the Kopps and Debbie and Matt, and it was what kind of formed my growth as a person. We never called Sally and Bob our aunt and uncle because they were more than that to us. They were like our second parents, and we had a really unique thing going up there where, like, me and Emily and Ben would be like running around doing something, and one of the parents would come and like tell us, okay, you guys need to go do this. It wasn't like our parents taking care of us. It was like a communal, like hippie environment, and it was great. And he brought his boat up every summer, and we called him Captain Bob. We went boating and tubing and water skiing, and it was just amazing. One of the things that I remember the most about him was that I'm a very opinionated person, and so is Bob, and we would have very in-depth conversations about different topics, and he taught me growing up that it wasn't one way or the other if you were having a conversation or a debate about something. It was that two things can be true at the same time. So I might think something about what's going on in the world, and he might think something different, but we could sit down and have like an hour and a half conversation about just the topic and not argue, and that's something that I really, really value, that he brought into my life. And he was such an empathetic person. When I got sick and when I was in college, he was like the only, not my aunts and uncles, he came and visited me in the hospital, and just to make sure that I was okay, just to sit in a gazebo and talk with me for an hour and say, it's okay, like, I've been there, I've worked with people that have been there, like, I'm here for you. He was just an incredible, incredible human being, and I'm gonna miss him so much. I have a little poem that I want to share that I think fits really well, called Because I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but ourselves in immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of grazing grain. We passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet it feels shorter than a day. I first surmised the horses' heads were towards eternity. And that's all I have to say, but I'm gonna miss him so much, and thank you all for being here.
I'd just like to close by saying Bob and I didn't always agree on anything, everything, everything. I even the last time I was here visiting him, the Stanley Cup players were happening, and I was rooting for the St. Louis Blues, and he asked, why are you rooting for the Blues? I'm a Ranger fan. I can't root for the Bruins. So he accepted that. He also accepted my taste in music. He didn't care for Rod Stewart. But anyway, I respect people having different opinions. I respect him. He was my best friend. Thank you.
Now we're going to hear from Rob Jackson, who's Bob's nephew.
So, my Aunt Sally asked me to read the letter that I wrote Uncle Bob about a month ago. So it's dated June 19th, 2019. It says, to the one and only Uncle Bob Kopp. And here we are. Dear Uncle Bob, we are all sad to hear of your recent health diagnosis, but I am happy for the chance to reminisce about our best of times together. I will always remember you as being quick to chuckle, a great conversationalist, up to date on world and political affairs, and a wonderful dad and uncle. You almost always had a warm smile to give and were an integral figure during our many unforgettable Kleist family reunions and on our vacations to visit you guys in Mass. Whether it was at one of our numerous Ohio State parks or at our eventual go-to reunion site, Deep Creek Lake in Maryland, I fondly recall all of the boating, tubing, fishing, cookouts, hanging out, watermelon water football with the cousins, and a spammed watermelon. The summer that Scott, my brother Scott, who isn't here, Scott, David Rudinsky, maybe Ben, and probably others bleached their hair highlighter yellow. I think it was accidental. I think they just meant to like bleach their tips, but it was a full-on white hairdo. Go-karts, movies, a smidge of troublemaking, and lots of laughing. Those reunions were the best. I remember too when Emily was first introduced to the Greater family and became a star of our earliest reunions. Then for the later reunions, we went slip and sliding down the backyard hill at my parents' house, watched talent shows by the great-grandchildren, and attended the many weddings from Colorado to Boston with Ironton, Lexington, Columbus, and many more in between. Ben and Laura's wedding and reception was one of the very best I have ever attended. The location, snow, the music and the people, it was a fantastic weekend. We had great times in Massachusetts fishing off the coast and timing the tides to get the boat in and out. We had great times exploring and fishing with Ben at the lake near your house, dining at Gloucester. Well, I said that wrong.
No, you got
Like
it.
I nailed it? All right. Gloucester seafood restaurants, getting ice cream from the nearby ice cream shop, exploring from Salem up to Newburyport, and taking some of my earliest dips into the salty sea. Candlestick bowling, visiting Quincy Market, playing basketball in the driveway where Ben usually beat my brother Scott and me in 1 versus 2. We're the same age. Ben is just a little bit bigger than us. And of course, the infamous Ohio State-Michigan football game in the early 90s that got cut off because our VHS tape ran out. I remember taking in a ball game with you, Ben, Scott, and my dad at Fenway Park from the right field stands, and a Celtics game at TD Garden. And I probably have Arthur to thank for that as well. It sounds like we split tickets with you. I believe these sporting events were some of the first times I ever took a train, something that leaves an impression on a youngster. I always shared and still share your interest in sports. I'm glad that Boston sports have served you so well in the past 15 years or so. It's kind of like being an Ohio State Buckeye fan. We've had it pretty good. However, I've had an impossible time ever coming around to Bill Belichick and Michigan man Tom Brady. And although the Celtics were a bit of a Cleveland rival for a while, and although the Red Sox and bastard New York Yankees have an annoying way of buying all the star power, and although the Bruins beat the Blue Jackets in the playoffs last month, I can see that I have softened towards Boston sports teams, except for the Patriots, in recent years, the lone reason being that I know you and Ben are rooting for them, and I am happy that you have had such a fun sporting experience. Tell your mothers what they want to hear, was some advice Bob gave me in his New England accent, which I always admired and was kind of, I think for all of us Midwesterners, he was kind of an outlier with his accent. I think we all enjoyed that and appreciated it. So that was some advice he gave me over dinner with my mother, Aunt Sally, up at Lake Erie. I'm still working on that one. As I move into middle age and have a family I'm in middle age, I'll admit it, and have a family of my own, I see myself turning more and more into some reflection or version of my own dad. I imagine the same thing is happening with Ben, and we actually discussed this earlier, I think, and it's true. In our younger days, this would have been something we resisted. Now I know it's something to appreciate. You have been a great example of a caring, good-natured, bear with me. So I had mastered public speaking till now. You have been a great example of a caring, good-natured, and occasionally tough, which we all need, father. You and Aunt Sally did a fantastic job raising your 2 kids and being Aunt Sally and Uncle Bob. I didn't have a good cry till now. Ben and Emily are wonderful people. loved by those lucky enough to know them. I look forward to making many more memories with them. I cannot wait to meet your grandchildren, which luckily I met them this morning, sometime sooner than later, and to introduce Chelsea and my own 2 boys to them. I'm sure I will see some of you and Sally in them. So far I've seen a lot of Ben and a lot of Laura. It's pretty cool that Ben and Laura had twins and can carry on the family twin tradition. Chelsea and I would have to have several more kids for ours to have any chance of beating Ben's kids in pickup basketball. These 2 pages of memories could go on for many more. They are here to stay and will be passed down through the generations. We all love you very much.
So at this time, I'd like to invite anybody else up to the microphone who'd like to share a story or a memory.
I'm Uncle Dave. I'm the other husband. And first I have to set the record straight a little bit about the tape running out for the Ohio State-Michigan game. I have to give some background on this. I was weaned on Ohio State football. I grew up a couple miles from the stadium. I hadn't missed an Ohio State football game live for about 20 years. But we decided to come here for Thanksgiving, which was the twins' birthday. That's when the Ohio State-Michigan game happened. So being a good guy, I said, let's go do family stuff and we'll VHS this game. All right, and we did it, and we successfully did it. We came home, and Bob disappeared. He interrupted the tape to check the game, the live status. So, fast forward, we watched the game, and Ohio State is number 2 in the nation, set to be, national champs probably if they beat Michigan, heavily favored, killing them at halftime. I mean, it was not even close. And then our star cornerback slips. Michigan scores a long touchdown right at the beginning of the 3rd quarter, and they're in the game. And it comes down to the last minute. Michigan's up by 4 points. Ohio State's driving. And then all of a sudden the game's over and Michigan won. And I go, what happened? Bob! I could have wrung his neck. So yeah, he interrupted the tape, and so I missed that last minute and a half. Obviously Ohio State lost, but so that's one thing. And then I wasn't going to go there, but no, this is something else. This is more serious. Bob is one of the toughest guys I know.
Now I'm breaking down.
I'll tell the story later. Someone else?
Sally's sister, my wife, said, "Oh, what the hell are you going to say?" Just a second ago. But I want to say to everybody here today, we've heard so much about Bob Kopp being a family man. He was also a member of the Cleiss family. And Robbie did such a beautiful job talking about all these wonderful things that happened with Bob Kopp. And he was there for us. Cleiss family, stand up. Let me see the Cleiss family. Bob Kopp was a man for all seasons.
I've got something else I can say that won't shut me up. I got little thoughts. This one is a quote from Sally this week. Sandy, her twin, and I arrived 8 days ago, and it's been, I call it my marching orders, but honey-do lists, one after another. Oh, it's been great. I'm ecstatic to be busy and happy and productive. But here's Sally goes, "Well, Dave, you're going to be doing double duty now. That's what happens when a spouse of a twin dies. The remaining husband gets shared. And I go, Bob, I got your back, baby.
I'm not calling you dad.
I didn't really have anything prepared, but I definitely felt like I wanted to say something. And I talked with Remy and Jeremy about this, and I think something really cool about my relationship with Bob was that, like, basically I knew Bob on vacation. Like, I'd go on vacation with Bob, so it was really cool. Like, I got to know Bob, like, when he was super stoked. I mean, I'm sure he's always stoked, but but yeah, I think it's really cool that, like, that's the time I got to spend with him. And something kind of weird that happened, like, about a month ago that's pretty tight is so when we were on vacation one time, I came downstairs at like 7 in the morning and made like a huge salami sandwich, and Bob like came around the corner and was like, "Jesus, Matthew, you must have an iron stomach." And like a month ago, I made like this sandwich that was just brutal. I was like eating it, I was like, "This is gonna be no good." And then like I like for whatever reason remembered that time Bob said that. I was like, "You got an iron stomach." I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna finish this." And like, I finished it, and then like 2 weeks later, I got a call from my mom about how Bob had passed. And I don't know, it's just crazy that like I was thinking about him like 2 weeks before that happened. But yeah.
Hi, my name's Mary Ellen, and I'm Remy's mom and Art's wife and Jeremy's mother, and good friends of Sally and Bob and the Kopp family. And Bob was just a great guy. I mean, one thing, he's going to be with me all the time when I'm grilling, because he taught me how to turn the meat at the right time. And I always, to this day, have a timer with me when I go out and I grill my meat. And you do it for 6 or 8 minutes depending, and then you flip it, and then you do it again, and but hamburgers you only do once. You don't flip those twice. So that was definitely, he'll be with me whenever I'm grilling. Another time is I love to garden. I have a passion for gardening the way Bob did when he was healthy and did so much of it. And part of our fun experiences in Vermont is he exposed me to gardener world up in Vermont. And it was outside of Burlington. And we would go off, like he went off with my husband, I would go off with Bob sometimes. And we would go to the garden center and just poke around and look at little things, and it was just so much fun. And I never even knew it was there, and it was a great experience, just a fun thing. The other thing we did is he was really into covered bridges. So one time when we were up there, we spent a day, Art, Bob, and I, and we just drove around Vermont looking for all the covered bridges we could find. Some we could go through, some we couldn't. But it was a great, those memories are what's going to be with me. And he was just such a kind person. He helped my family during a very difficult time in our life, and he was there for us the second he heard that something happened. And he was there for my husband to help him through a process that was very complicated. And that was who Bob was. That's who he was, and that's who he was to his last day. And I'm just so glad that I was able to meet him and have him as part of my life. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Connor. I used to live next door. I was afraid of Bob for probably about 4 years. I didn't prepare anything. I just want to express my gratitude for all that he gave us as a family and how much encouragement he gave me, like coming up playing sports, playing music. Took us on vacation, was so good to us all the time. He was there when I smashed my face into his garage, and Sally was too. He was there when I got hit by a car. There was a lot of accidents, and he showed up every time. Yeah. And he said, "Connor, what happened?" And yeah, I just remember like we'd go on vacation, it would be like Emily and Remy and Ben, and it was like the big kids, and it was me and my little sister, and we were the little kids, and then there was like the adults. And Bob was, the adults. Bob was, and Art and Marielle and Deb and Sal and all y'all, like, I remember seeing you guys reading books and thinking one day that's going to be me. And you know, that day is approaching. And he'll always be, you know, a model for the person that I want to be. And I'm so grateful to have known him and to all you guys.
I want to offer anybody else a chance to get up and say any words without rushing anyone.
I don't even know where to start, but like one of the other gentlemen who spoke, most of my experiences with Bob were our family reunions, and I felt bad. I still feel bad to this day for stealing half of his beers on my but he introduced me. Yeah, I mean, you know, you get some good craft beer, it beats the hell out of a 30-pack of Natural Light. And all you Ironton or Lawrence County people know this, but he inadvertently introduced me to fine beers. And he was a patient man because he never once said anything. He looked at me like, I know you drank some of my beers, but he never said anything. You know what I mean? Because he knew that I enjoyed it. And I always appreciate the fact that he took time to work with special needs people, and I try to do that, you know, with my life, and that's important to reach out to people who, you know, may be physically, mentally, or financially, whatever, you know, their situation is, and make some special needs. Do what you can for them. It means a lot, and he's a great man. You know what I mean? He influenced me in nothing but positive ways, and that's how I remember him. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to do last call here. Thank you guys all so much today for sharing your memories, for being here. I know that Sally and Ben and Emily and the family feel all of your love surrounding them, and that's the most precious gift of all. And I know that Bob is here too, and smiling down on all of us and laughing a little bit at how sweaty we are. I'd like to end today with a prayer that Sally had shared with me. It's a Unitarian prayer. May love surround us. May joy gladden us. May peace lie deep within. And may our lives and the lives of all those Bob touched go well. Thank you all, everyone. I believe that there is food ready over here. I want everyone out to also get a drink and make sure that you're hydrating and replacing all those fluids.